but just my reputation alone, that was enough. They
Oh
told me,
yeah.
you're gonna lose that car. No, I gotta get it. I gotta get it to the other side of the lot. Yeah, he
That's
was he was tough on parking spots.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's
Yeah,
quite the
he didn't
mirror made there.
suffer that. He did not suffer the indignity of people taking his parking spots. I
So
did have once when I was on Grumpy Old Men. Actually, we were at Warner Hollywood. For some weird fluke of luck, it was like the only time I think in my life that I had an assigned parking spot where they actually put my name on it, like the
yeah,
tire stopper. You know what
that's
I'm
really
saying?
cool.
Yeah, but it was right next to Harrison Ford's. And it
What?
was just like the weirdest thing in the world because I don't like it was just completely random. I mean, but like Harrison Ford's parking spot was next to my car. And I would go out there and take pictures of
Yeah, so that's what I would do.
this curb, you know?
That's what
Yeah,
I would do.
yeah.
I would totally do that. Did you get to meet him?
I said hello to him once or twice when he got in his car. I never actually did meet him. I mean,
Okay.
it's just sort of, I don't know. The thing is that when you work there a lot, you're kind of being around those people. You don't actually go towards them. I mean, unless it's sort of like being in the mob and you need to be introduced by a third person.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like a made man never talks to another made man unless a third made man brings the two of them together. Yeah, if you have somebody like that and he's standing next to you in the car, you might like say hi, but you're not going to go, how was your day, or anything like that. It's just like kind
Well,
of not
there's that
not
famous
done.
there's that famous scene in uh how people and it was correct the way he said it in Donnie Brasco, where he goes, if you're a mobster now, if me and you were in the mob and there's a guy, I introduce you to a guy and he's not in the mob, I say this guy is a friend,
Friend of mine,
you're a
yeah.
friend of mine. But if he's in the mob too, we're all three of us are in the mob, I say he's a friend of ours.
Yeah.
So then
I mean, I'm not, it's somewhat like that. I'm just saying you kind of know that people have their personal space, I guess you would say. And you just know that celebrities and other people like that are constantly being accosted by just sort of, civilian passersby or whatever. And the last thing you want to kind of do is want to make them uncomfortable at their place of work or right by
right,
where their
right.
dressing room is or something like that, because it's just sort of a violation of space.
Yes.
And just, it's their prerogative to be left alone, really. So yeah, I passed by a number of people that I never said anything to because you just don't.
This is last question, and because do you mind if we do more of these? Because we can't cover your whole, this man's done over 500. Do you mind if we do another one of these?
No, not at all.
Oh, great. Okay, so
Because you got to eat.
I know I
Yeah.
I shouldn't have told him that, but it just
Well, that's life, It's
no, it's
like,
just I shouldn't have told you that. That was stupid of me. So, um, like what do you think of Hollywood now?
I don't know. It's tough, I mean, I guess it's colored by. It was never the same for me after the hack. All that stuff came out, and my identity was like, stripped away, and I had like years of problems based on that, and then everybody, like, when I first got to Columbia, we were all in this one big building of people in marketing, people in distribution, people in the press relations, foreign sales. Everyone knew what was kind of going on, and they had these big things that they called the big meeting, and almost everybody was invited to it, because the guy that was there, Jeff Blake, who had been the one of the principals at Paramount for years, and did Godfather and a lot of other pictures, was sort of a titan of the business. And so he controlled his own like space and environment in a building that was separated by the whole studio lot from all the production and executive, production and development executives. And it was a really fun atmosphere. People would, excuse me, people would, the actors would come in to like see the posters or whatever, and and there would always be people there, and lunch would be served, and people would just throw things like over order, and there would be like huge catered lunch just sitting out in the kitchen area, like after they were finished in the boardroom or whatever, and people would, all the people that took music albums, in order to do possible score ideas for the movies or whatever, would leave all those and just say, take what you want later. And I don't know, it was just kind of a fun and freewheeling, inclusive environment where, if some kind of policy thing changed on a particular movie's release schedule or anything like that, I could just walk down to one of the executives' doors and like either talk to them directly or their secretary and say, what's going on? Did it just like move a month or two and we're off that trailer now? We're not doing that anymore. And they would just, they would just fill you in. But after the hack, they broke up all the Jeff Blake got forcibly retired. And the whole they destroyed that whole building. They built this big, huge multi-story building there that became like the headquarters for Sony Music and BMI and whatever else they control, which is half the world. And they broke up all the different departments in the different buildings that were scattered all over the lot. So then there was this incredible lack of communication, because there's also this like there wasn't much turnover in the business, say from like 2000 to I don't know, the first 10 years or something like that. It was like almost everybody, that was a few people came and left, but they would always have this like cocktail reception or something and introduce like the new people that were coming. It was all really civilized and cool. I mean, and I guess most of it just came off of Jeff Blake. He was just like this film god or whatever, but his whole way of doing business was just mensch-like. I mean, everyone was included and everyone was kind of pulling on the team, and people could talk up and you could offer suggestions, even if you were like the floor sweeper or whatever. If you had a better idea, that was cool, or people would at least listen to it. And everyone knew who was coming and who was going and what was happening. After that, it was like, it actually got to the spot where I felt like I was in a building where I was isolated and I didn't know, and everyone had moved on and they had all these new executives. And I had never met any of them. I only knew them by email and phone. So, I mean, so if I walked outside and passed them on the way to lunch or something, I wouldn't even know who they were. I mean, every once in a while there would be a Christmas party or something like that, and maybe I knew their assistant or something like that, and they'd actually introduce me to them. But it was just the weirdest thing. It was just, I felt very disconnected from the process. And there were times where I would be working on a particular project that had been killed like the week before, and no one ever mentioned it. Oh. So we were still like working on a deadline that no longer existed, and no one ever bothered to like kind of call and say, hey, we're doing something else.
But Ed, I'm just amazed nobody sat there and said, guys, we have a problem. Like this needs to be fixed.
Well, because the new executives sort of post-hack weren't really amenable to that. They did everything in smaller and smaller groups of people in the know, and everyone else that was not in the know. And it was a way of sort of holding power. I mean, information is power. So, I'm just saying, it's just like, but it got, I mean, I loved it still, but it got old in some ways. And like, I remember, working all the way through an entire Thanksgiving holiday, for Ghostbusters. And they were doing like I don't know, we were doing like
You were,
seven.
are you talking about the first Ghostbusters?
No, the Ghostbusters, the remake, not even this one that's out now, the one with the all-female cast.
Oh, the one that nobody watched.
Well, the one that didn't, yeah, that few people watched and had horrible fanboy hatred all over the internet for it, and that couldn't be overcome by any marketing genius,
Yeah.
you know. So, and I actually talked to Dan Aykroyd about it one day because I was like, I saw him outside the commissary, and I went up to him to just to say hello, and the funny thing is that like no one knew who Dan Aykroyd was anymore. He was just like alone there.
I got his vodka right up here. I got.
I'm just saying that like all the kids that worked on the lot and stuff like that, he was just grandpa,
They
you
didn't know.
know.
They didn't know who Dan Aykroyd
No,
was.
no, they didn't know who Dan Aykroyd was.
Well, they're gonna know now with the new movie
Yeah,
out.
you
It's
know, I
kicking
know. It's I
ass.
mean,
That that
people come back and come and go, whatever. But I'm just saying it was a weird point in time, and he was a little insecure about the film. He was one of the producers, and he wanted to know what I thought about it because I was when I told him that I was working on the marketing team. And then we just sat down and we just like ate a sandwich together, and it was just that was like he was really personable and that was really nice. But I just could sense that he was like terribly lonely, that somehow like that he wasn't getting information from the studio about what was really going on in some ways either.
what Stephen? What'd you tell him?
I'd rather not say. I
Okay,
mean,
all right, all right.
that's something where I kind of,
Sure, sure. No, I understand.
but
But
but what I'm just saying is that like whole this sort of lack of communication was like I think was almost like a cultured thing that was done more or less deliberately, and even though in its wasteful moments, but I mean, it just, yeah, it was just a different culture completely, I didn't enjoy it as much, and I would say that that was so much more typical of what Hollywood has become. I mean, people making these business decisions in the rarefied confines of the upper floors of these buildings where the it just doesn't really no one really passes the information off to anybody unless it's absolutely necessary. And it's just they just hold on to it for as long as possible in order to maintain their options. So this lack of communication is almost a policy, not an oversight. Because I
right,
talked to my boss about it on a number of occasions about, about bringing people in, like introduce them to like our team and all that, so at least we could recognize them if we saw them at lunch. And he said, I don't know what to do because he got to go into some of those meetings, but there were meetings that he was barred from. So it was a strange thing, and a lot of times he was out of the loop of knowing what they really had done. But yeah, what happened is we were doing I think Cine Asia, like convention was driving like the creation of I think the 12 iterations of trailers for different markets, 5 domestic, with TV spots, like a long form TV spot, and then like different foreign markets, and they wanted to produce them all at once to like save time and efficiency, and sort of they also wanted to do like day and date release, worldwide. That actually coincidentally was Jeff Blake's calling card. He had invented the day and date theatrical release worldwide in order to evade piracy,
right.
and he was a marketing genius. So so they got we did a lot of day and date things on the big pictures, and yeah, so we worked that entire weekend, and they had called it off sometime like over that 4-day weekend, and meanwhile I had booked like theaters and like all over Westwood because they said that they wanted to go from one theater to another without waiting for like for them to like swap the trailers. So they wanted to like have like every theater in Westwood like open or whatever on Monday morning for them to like look at it. So, and the whole thing, like when Monday came, we had all that everything was ready to go, and the whole thing had gone away sometime Saturday night, and no one
Yeah,
ever bothered to call.
right.
So it just seemed odd. I mean, and it was kind of like I missed a family event, and it was just, and that was one of the first times I kind of felt, you know, I mean, yeah, it's money and they're paying you and everything, and it's double time or triple time or whatever the hell it was, but like, but you don't get your Thanksgiving back. You know what I'm saying? And it's fine if you're doing it for a cause, but if it's you're doing it for a lost cause, it's sort of it's kind of odd, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But it was really cool when I asked you about uh and this is important, and I try and tell this to my son. Um, you notice how I tried to sneak in that question about, so what'd you say to Dan Aykroyd? And uh, Stephen was like, I'd rather not say. That is important. I try and tell that to my son. Just sometimes your trust, when you talk to somebody, if he wants, if somebody wants to tell you something, but if they tell you, you know what, this is between me and you,
Yeah.
uh, that's very important, and that's very cool. Uh, uh, in a day where people don't have morals anymore, it just seems like that's good that you've got those morals. And I try and tell that to my son and anybody else that wants to listen. It's important, you
Yeah,
know.
when people tell you things in confidence, you really have to kind of go with that. I mean, if you customarily break that, then you're
No,
not
then
really a
you
very
don't.
trustworthy person.
You're not working. Then you wonder why you're not working the next
Yeah.
gig. It's that simple. But next time we're going to do I want to do a live stream where people can ask you questions, if that's okay. If that's okay. If you don't want to, then it'll just be this format.
Yeah, I'm not in love with live stream.
All right, then no
I
live
can't,
stream.
it's kind of distracting.
Yeah, so all right, no live stream. But folks, the man has worked over 500 films. Uh, uh, the things that he's said, just the tip of the iceberg, uh, that we've talked to today. And a lot of people are going to sit there and go, "Why didn't you ask him this? Why didn't you ask him that?" Folks, give me a break.
Well, why don't they submit questions to you, and then
Yes,
you'll be prepared with more of them the next time out.
yes. If there's any questions, because Steven's not into live streams, and I totally get that. If you have any questions that you want to ask, and they're not all to do about the porn industry, if they're legitimate questions, I will ask him. Okay, and it's up to him if he would like to answer. Okay, um, and
The
I just
500 film, dilemma though it's a quandary because I mean my memory banks have expunged tremendous volume of information about things. I mean, I was on a plane to Asia maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, and now how you can get like 40 pictures on a trans-Pacific flight, and you may have time to like look at two or three of them if you're just kind of restless and not sleeping. So I was just bopping around looking at the different channels and whatnot, and I landed on one. And I went, that looks so familiar. Where did I see that before? Was it cable or where did I watch that? And then, like, after about 5 minutes, it came to me, I worked on it, and it was just like, and it was an odd sensation, to have actually completely forgotten most of the details about it. It happened to have been one of these ones that Screen Gems did, where they had like the same story, sort of this black woman in distress, and but the location would change. It was always like, she meets like a charming stranger who's actually really dangerous, and then her ex-boyfriend ends up rescuing her from, near death. So we probably did 5 movies with different titles or that had different actors in them, but it was always the same plot line. And
right.
over the course of the time that I was there, we did 5 different ones, and strange, they were all successful. I think they were all successful, but I just had completely merged them all into like one thing, I guess, and it was confusing to even like remember it, you
Right,
know.
right.
And I was like, I kind of went, well, I'm kind of slipping here, It's
Well,
like, I'm like looking this thing I worked on, I don't even remember it, That's weird.
I know, but Stephen, like that is what you've when you talk about the circus, the atmosphere, um, people dream about that. I mean, I would love to have been in your shoes, you know? So that's something that you could take away and just go, because I mean, I would have given my left nut to have done just a quarter of what you've done, a tenth, maybe okay, 5%, I guess. Yes, a left nut. I that is pretty remarkable, and the body of work that you've done, you got to be proud of, man. You got to be proud of.
It's interesting. Thank you. I appreciate your sentiment. I'm just saying that that circus-like atmosphere. I think maybe an actor can still get away with that now, but but performers, but that's not true really in terms of. I mean, now they're looking for technicians.
Mhm.
It's like, it's like, can you like, simulcast this to like, outer Siberia at the same time that we're doing like, opening in South America somewhere. It's I mean it's part of my generational problem probably because it's just the sheer technological like advances that have been made since like we went digital are like are hard to keep up with.
Yeah, like I try and explain it this way. I used to love watching Formula One. I own, I've got tons of models, but that's when the guys could drive the car and they had to adjust their own balance system. And these guys would race, and now now they're managing systems in the car. They're on
Yeah.
autopilot. They know what they're doing. They're just on autopilot and they're just listening to yeah, back then when in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they you didn't have your somebody speaking to you to tell you to adjust this, turn this switch to number 2, L7. It was none of that. It was you were driving the car, and now it is you are just maintaining the car. All they want you to do now is take the car around 67 laps and
Yeah.
make sure you don't hit a curb. That's your
Right.
job. That's it.
That's your niche. Yeah, there's the level of micromanagement at every level of detail in all those businesses. It's become, I mean, different for for someone that like was more used to sort of individualism or or discovery of the process. It seems like it's then probably one of the reasons why you're disenchanted somewhat with films. I mean,
It just doesn't, it just
it's
doesn't.
pre-digested now somehow. You don't like very seldom is it actually found in the material. It's all just kind of formulaic.
I go hang out with a buddy. The problem is he's an hour and a half away, or else I'd be over his house all the time. He's got old pinball machines. He knows every bloody scene. His name's Bill Davern. He knows every. If I say a scene to him, he could he could he memorizes. He could like regurgitate the whole scene. I beat the hell out of him in pool, but once we're done, we'll sit in a room and we'll put on an old movie and watch a movie together. And I just enjoy it. It's just a different, I don't care if the movie's from 1955 or whatever. I just enjoy an old movie, but a good story, to the movie. Um, and even if it's like I love Crocodile Dundee. I love Goonies. I love anything that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And lately, I'll watch something and it just does not. I do this to my son. I go, "You want to see a cool Western? Dad, I want to see a Western." I go, "We're gonna watch a Western." "Oh, your Westerns." I put on Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And he's
Yeah.
like, they haven't said anything in like 7 minutes, Dad. And I go, just watch, just be quiet and watch the movie. And he absolutely loved it. And he called my dad because every, my dad's getting up there in age, but it was one of those wonderful moments where me and my dad at least once a year, we'd watch Good, the Bad, and the Ugly together, you know. And now I would look over at my dad, he was getting very old, and halfway through the movie, he's sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, he can't, watch the whole thing. So, but I remember my son called him and said, nonno in Italian means grandpa. Um, uh, I just watched Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And my dad was and this is during COVID, so he couldn't see him or whatever. So my dad got very emotional, you know. My dad's not an emotional guy, but it was because he remembers me as a little kid sitting with him watching this Western, and just the movie would give you this, just this beautiful emotion, you know. It was just this beautiful movie, well made movie. And that's something that I share with my son. So when my son sits there and goes, I want to watch a movie, Dad, and I tell him, okay, what do you want to watch a good movie? How the West Was Won. Let's sit and watch How the West Was Won. And he's in this, the everything. He's in this world, Stephen, of just, every second something's going off, and I just sit and watch. Just don't focus. Turn your phone, put your phone on mute, and watch a movie. And it takes him to a place, and I look over at him because I know what's gonna happen. And I look at him, and just, these beautiful lines in these movies, and you watch his reaction, and he'll turn to me and go, Dad, so what exactly does that mean? And I go, and I explain it to him, and I go, just watch. And then I catch him. This is the best part. I catch him the other day watching How the West Was Won by himself.
Wow. Cool.
And that to me,
Yeah, you did your job.
that to me was a movie. That to me was, when I saw E.T. the first time by myself, I cried in the theater. It was very powerful for me.
You know what movie did it for me that actually put me on the course of my life's journey?
What was that?
Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes.
My aunt, I think I was only 8 years old. My aunt took me to that movie in Beverly Hills on a rainy day, and I was mesmerized by that
Yes.
film. And it's not for 8-year-olds.
No,
It's
no.
it's gory. It's got, like a lot of adult themes to it for that time, especially. It was somewhat shocking. But the just the sweep of it and the score and the acting and the entire concept of it was so overwhelming that I told her to take me again the next day, and that was it. I was like hooked on movies. I mean,
Yes.
that was the moment I can say that's where my life course actually deviated from wherever I was going.
See,
I
but
went to movies.
you've got brains, Stephen. I don't. The thing is,
What do you mean
um,
you don't?
it just long story. I'll explain it after.
Okay.
So what you notice with those movies like Lawrence of Arabia, and I tell this to my son, I go, what do you notice besides it being a good story? What do you notice with the actors? What do you see? And he says the eyes. They all have these, like Peter O'Toole had these beautiful eyes. All the actors, Clint Eastwood had those eyes that could look right through you. Charles Bronson had those eyes. You know, uh, all these actors had these incredible. They could you just with that one look, you knew exactly what they were thinking and what they were about to say, and they didn't need to say it. And that's what's missing
Yeah.
in the world of acting these days is those. If you got a pair of these that are beautiful, that they don't need to be baby blues. They could be just you could how many times you see a movie and it moves you because the actor's eyes well up. It's so well done.
Yeah, no, it's
You know,
the interior is coming out through their eyes. I actually have an interesting story where I was sort of, I think, on the short end of the stick on that on that on that issue. You know, I mean, I'm sort of a dialogue driven guy,
Yes.
and I was like in my writing career, I had a moment where I was rewriting one of my stories with Sidney Poitier,
Oh my
and
God, Bill Davern's gonna get a boner off of this one. Go on.
well, so I was at his house. And we were going over the script, which had already been completely rewritten and completely changed by the studio, so it was unrecognizable. And trying to like regurgitate it somehow back to like somewhat near the original form of the screenplay that myself and my partner had written. And we were and we, it was a situation where it was someone was coming around a corner, and he, I can't remember the exact scenario that it was, but he was saying that he was going to know that that guy knew that he was around the other side of the building, and he was going to like surprise him because he knew that that guy knew it. And I said, well, how do you know all that? And he said, it's in my eyes. and
Yes.
i said and I said, what do you mean? Like you think you can just do that all in your eyes? You can tell the audience that you know that he knows what he knows and that you're gonna stop him before he gets there with just a look? And he goes, yes. And I like looked at him kind of in shock in a way, because my natural inclination was like to have some sort of audio cue or something like that. And he suddenly like looked at me and said, "You do it." And I kind of like looked up and I went, "What?" He goes, "You do it." And I went, "I can't do it, sir. I'm not an Academy Award winning actor." And he looks at me and goes, "Well, I am." That was like I felt about that big, there's the Academy Award over in his, fireplace. I was like,
Oh,
yeah, okay. Never mind about the dialogue.
but it's true,
Yeah, it
Stephen.
is
It's
true.
true. With the eyes, it can convey so much with the eyes.
Yeah, the
There's
good
that.
ones. Yeah,
What's his name? Um, just a small little when Walter Matthau did the remember the Great Train Robbery, when the guy sneezed and he opened up the door, and just Mathau's eyes, just you knew it caught him.
yeah. No, Malthus was incredibly expressive with it, with his face. He had that kind of hangdog look, but he could convey a lot with his eyes. I mean, I had the pleasure of working with the two of them on Grumpy Old Men, which is a whole nother story. He and Jack Lemmon, who were completely different in their acting approaches.
What
And
do you mean different?
well, okay, so I mean, you Jack Lemmon told me that he had, like, as a young actor, been schooled by Billy Wilder, that when they were on Some Like It Hot, that Marilyn Monroe was all over the map, and Billy Wilder said to him, "I need you to be my rock. You need to do your performance exactly the same way every time, because we're probably going to do 50 takes on each thing, because Marilyn doesn't, like, know what she's doing sometimes. She's got like a lot of heart, but she's wild. So I need you to do what you need to do like every time, so
Right.
that so that it works." So he was the guy who, when he said his lines, he modulated it in the same way. He like didn't deviate in improv lines or anything. But curiously, he had no situational awareness of like whether he was standing, sitting, holding a coffee cup, putting a pencil through his ear or whatever during the course of the scene, because he was completely transfixed by dialogue.
Right.
Walter Matthau knew what he was doing at all times, and would be perfectly, like, through the course of a take, he would be perfectly in the same spot. He'd come in the door at the same time. He'd sit at the exact same space in the scene or whatever. But he would change lines at completely freely. He would take the middle and turn it to the beginning, and the end and the middle, and improv new stuff from take to take. So when you had the two of them together, it was very, very difficult to cross from one angle to the other because they would be in a different spot, each one of them.
Right.
Like, Mathau would be saying a different line, and Lemon would be sitting when he used to be standing. So it's like this is one of those things. But they were great together. I mean, it was like watching them work was like movie magic.
And you got to be on set and watch them do those
Yeah,
scenes.
we were on set a lot because we were all stuck in Minneapolis together in the middle of winter. So it was we were out in Prince's studio.
I took a
Um,
girl out on a date on a date to watch that, and she didn't know that I was a like I rarely laugh hard, and she thought I was some tough guy or whatever. I worked at a factory, and um she kept looking over at me because I was howling. I was literally in tears watching that movie, laughing so hard, saying, when this, I've got to take my dad to see this movie. He loves Walter Matthau.
yeah, yeah.
So I kept, telling her, I got to take my dad to see this movie. This is the best. And she just kept looking at me like I was an alien because I was laughing so incredibly hard. We go to a party and she goes, have you ever heard Vito laugh? And they're like, not really. He kind of chuckles, but he never, she goes, he was howling in the theater, literally howling. And I, I love Walter Matthau, and I guess it was just a well done movie.
Yeah, it was very well done movie, and they're just so good together. But you just riffed me into another thing before I know you.